Hello everyone. So today, if we don't get done with this painting today, it's going to be pretty close. So a few things that I want to work on today is right here the river kind of runs into the tree line, and so I kind of just want to firm up where that river is. So I might just extend the river more to a point here to get that boundary firmed up. Also, we've got this dark tree line that kind of goes the length of the horizon, and I kind of want to use more of a darker green to just kind of firm up where that tree line is. Also, these trees are pretty bright. I'm going to add maybe just a few of those dark. I think I might just go with some pine trees in here. Not necessarily native to this. The inspiration for this film is kind of, my experience in Winona, but also the time I spent in Duluth, and I think some dark pine trees would just add a little bit of flair to this. I'm also going to kind of clean up this little hill that's in the middle here, just kind of define that. And then over here, I'm just going to add a little bit more of those darker leaves, some darker greens. You can see a lot of the reds kind of got taken away with when we added the yellow, it turned into an orange. That's fine. I'm just going to add a few darker places in here. And then kind of the ending spot is getting the paper parch trunks in here. I might add a few more maybe lighter green leaves in here, and then this little patch here. I actually kind of think it would be kind of cool to see if I can get it to be like a sandbar, and see if I can get that going. Looking at more so the dot cam and less so in real life, it looks like if I were to use a soft brush stroke, it looks like it could be just like a sandbar. And so I am going to start with kind of the lightest colors first. So I'm going to start with the sandbar idea, and I am going to start with this water idea and kind of get these are going to be a lot wetter colors to get that flowy look to them. And then I'll move up, just kind of move up as I do this. So I'm going to get started with this. This is, so to get this brownish color, we did just the smallest amount of red possible. The last time we did this, we used way too much red. So I'm just going to use, and this was ultramarine blue and yellow. So just the smallest amount, all of those colors, and then a ton of white to get that color. And actually maybe a little bit more of the yellow. It looks pretty. So I'm just starting a big glob of white. And that's going to be my base. And then I'm just going to take the back of my paintbrush and just dab a little bit of white or a little bit of red in there, a little bit of blue, and maybe a little bit more yellow, and see what we get. And it's very close to what I want. It's kind of amazing how close it is that I want. So let me just show you what this looks like. Just a very nice sandy color. And I'm gonna get that cleaned off, and then get my brush, and we're gonna add quite a bit of maybe a little bit of water, not too much. I do like the watery look to this, but we also don't want it to run too much into our existing what we already have. So just kind of going over this, and we want it thick enough to cover up so that it still looks like sand, but not too thick where it's going to run into other other things in our canvas that we like. So just getting as close as I possibly can to that blue. And then I'm going to get a little bit of the darker stuff. Try to get some of those little pieces of shoots of grass. So there we go. And then I'm actually going to darken this. So I'm just going to add another shoot of a little splash of red to what we've got. Another splash of blue to what I've got. Ooh, it's not cooperating a second. And then bigger splash of yellow. Get that going. And it's just darkening up my hair. This is a little bit greener than I would like. I'm just going to compare the colors, see what I ended up with. You can go a little bit darker on this. So again, just a dollop of red. I'm just trying to get enough difference where I get a contrast between the sand and then maybe just a few flecks of darker sand. That's all I'm hoping for. And this is much darker. So you can see a little bit darker. And so just gonna get that. And I'm gonna water this one down a little bit more. So hopefully it doesn't run into anything too much. But again, the goal with this is to just add just a few accents of like the sand, because we know that sand is not necessarily even. So just create some depth in that. And that's done. So next I'm gonna work on this guy right here. Again, we had we used the Thale cyanine blue, and we're just gonna kind of bring that forward here. And then this was the ultramarine blue, and they just kind of blended together. So I'm just gonna kind of bring that up a little bit, kind of just tidying up this piece. I believe that this piece is pretty well done. And I believe there was just a dab of yellow. I've already got some yellow on my palette, so I'm going to use some of that same yellow and then see what it gets. There's definitely some white in that. I'm trying to use as little paint as possible. I'm trying to conserve what I've got. Now I added too much white, but this is also quite a bit. It's not quite the color I was looking for. And this is just a little piece, so I mean, this doesn't have to be perfect, but we just want it close. Yep, there we go. Got it. So this is kind of closer to that darker color that is up here, and that will be wiped out. And I'm going to use that same brush, and I'm going to see if I can get this color to go up into the horizon just a little bit. My horizon did go a little bit lower. That's not a huge deal. You know, we can always make that work, but just from the river standpoint, we want to make sure that the color is kind of in but it kind of blends. These two colors are kind of both bold, and so we're gonna, yeah, just like that. So I'm just kind of getting that river to connect. And then the ultramarine fluid, a little bit of whites, and then that'll get blended right in there. So small amount of that, and of white, and I'm keeping tiny amounts here because I know that yesterday my palette got very fast, so I just want to make sure that blue kind of a little bit close now. And I'm not really cleaning my brush too much. Essentially, in those little areas, I'm gonna get heavily blended. So just a little bit right here. And that's quite a bit. So let's see if I can spread that out and then go into and blend those two colors. There we go, that's all cleaned up. Didn't quite get into there. We do need to wait until these two colors dry to get some of those darker trees. So I am going to start over here and then that's my way. But I actually want to get some of that dark green on canvas. And that darker green is going to be a little trickier to get. I do think that my the fallow siding is going to give me kind of that darker green for a pine tree. A little bit more the color that I'm thinking. So just a little, I did two very small of those and just a hint of yellow. And then, whoops, I'll have to pick that up. Let's see what we get here. So it's still pretty, yeah, nice, pretty dark green. So it is pretty dark, but definitely looks in that pine tree well. So I am gonna just see what I come up with. If it's too dark, I can always add it and make it lighter later. So I'm just gonna get a little bit over it and see what I can do with this color. And it is pretty light, but I'm just gonna see if I like kind of over here where it's kind of out of the way. See. So yeah, I like that's pretty dark. I actually like the idea of darkening it even more with just the smallest amount of black. Just to, I'm just gonna dip the black in there just to get a little bit of a darker color. Let's see if that helps darken that up a little. And like I've said in previous videos, black is a very powerful color. It does take over a lot, so I'm going quite a bit slower to get these colors on here. And I think that's a good dark. So now that I see that color, and again, just put it in a place where there's a bunch of wet paint, so I don't want to stay in that spot. But what I am going to do is add just a few pine trees to this area. So right here we've got some of these lighter colored trees, and there's no treetops on them yet. That's a future thing. But I am going to add just a few like little trees in here. So just a few. They're not going to be that many, and these are even. As I'm looking at this color, I'm going to say that that's still a little lighter than what I'd like, but it is darkening it up, giving this a little bit more depth. That was the goal with having some of these trees. So just adding lots of trees. You can kind of see I'm aiming for some of the places where it's a little bit lighter green to try to make that just a little bit of a darker background. Not too dark, but just a little. So it's a little bit of difference to this forest or wooded area, whatever it is. So the nice thing about these trees is any part of this wooded area that I don't like, if I don't like the way that the colors are perfectly blended, I'm not saying that it has to be perfect, but if there's anything that I didn't care for, these are a nice way to add just something that these trees are just very good fillers. This style of tree, these pine trees, and you can kind of see in the video that they are shaping up quite nicely. Looks good. And I will leave that for now. I might, later decide that I like those and would like to add more. I am going to, I can see that the part where I had put paint is starting to dry. I don't want to risk that too much, but I'm going to start getting some of that horizon just redefined. So maybe it's short grasses, maybe it's peaked trees. Can't argue with that. That looks very nice. And then just a few in here, even though I'm going to add some more leaves up here, just adding a few of these trees. So that looks good. Just a few spots, but trying to tame down some of this. I love the red and the yellow, but both of them are very powerful colors. So on camera, this area looks a little bit tougher. So just adding, gives me that bird's eye view the camera does. So it's kind of nice. So that is good for the pine trees for now. I might decide that I want to change that later. On there. Next, I'm going to work on some of these lighter colored leaves. Now, I was thinking about adding some here, so we'll see what we end up with. So I'm just getting my stirring brush back. I have some of that light ultramarine blue that I had already used, and I'm going to, ultramarine. So I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow to that, and I actually want quite a bit of yellow. So I need a little bit more yellow, and I'm aiming for something that's kind of a very kind of a neon green, kind of in the same range as these. So just a very, so we've got this kind of it kind of looks like that green. So that's what I was aiming for. And again, I'm just gonna get my brush wet, and I'm gonna add just a few of those green leaves to the tree. And add just a little bit more water to make this go a little further. So I do want a few of these down in this area. There's too much water. So, and they do match. They match way too much with this wonderful background. But some of you might know once I did. Just keep going. So this is where we want it goes. I'm getting up into the sky a little bit. And it's just a little splash of green because, like I said, some of these, the reds and the yellows, I actually really like the reds and the yellows, but just a little splash. I am planning to go back over this with the yellow, and maybe even a little yellow with white to really brighten it, but I just wanted to create just a few more of those greens in there under the yellow. And I really like that. Now over here, I'm running low on this color, but I want to add just a few leaves in there. And since I'm running out of every other color excepting red, I'm just gonna see what I can do with some red on here. Doesn't really do a whole lot. Okay. We'll work on that later. So next I want to get this hill. So we've got some trees that are in the hill. And so what I was thinking is, so I see like a little part of a hill right there. And then like almost another little hill that kind of, and in nature that would be normal. So I've got the sandy brown. I'm essentially gonna add a little bit of black to that and see if I can get it darkened. That's it. I don't wanna mix a whole new shade of gray. I'm just gonna use what I already have on my palette. Trying to get a medium gray. So not quite slate, but not as light as maybe I think of like steel gray or like U.S. Navy ships, like that color gray. A kind of darker gray than that, but not quite as dark as like slate or that color. So just a nice medium gray. Obviously, there's going to be a little brown in it, and that's fine. But this is kind of the color, and it's just a very, just a very medium neutral gray. And I am going to go with just a little bit of water to have quite a bit of, still have some teal on my brush. Oh, quite a bit of teal. Either that or I have teal in my cup. I'm assuming it's in my cup. Yeah. Okay, so you know what? We're gonna have a little bit of teal on the rocks. That's okay. And I do want this to be a very light brush stroke, but since I'm gonna follow this, it's actually even a little bit lighter than I want. Just kind of following that down. Just creating that ledge where that tree is. And then on the other side, so now that that's there, I actually kind of like the idea of this going a little bit this way. Make sure things are not straight. Give it a little, little bit of a, and then up here we've got kind of another one that's just a little bit, maybe one down here that's a little bit of a yellow. And this in the middle is a lot of hill. There we go. Got some kind of rolling hills going on in there. And the black is a little dark, but you know, nature kind of looks weird. We can always darken this up if I need to. I am gonna leave that till next go around. I don't want to mess with it now because I like the way that it looks on camera, just kind of rolling rocky hills. And so we're definitely not at a little bit of space here, but might need some touching up. These trees obviously paint-dries. We've got some yellow over here, so I'm just going to grab that yellow because these trees here and the leaves up here can add some bright yellow, and that's something that those places aren't too wet where this is going to interfere, but otherwise it's pretty close to where I want. I did forget to grab the pieces for the paper birch. I need more of the cardboard. I used that in the last video. So just a little bit of some of those brighter leaves. Still looks like it might be a little wet. That's okay. Get some of those yellow leaves in here. Go. Much more up here. We could go all day with leaves on trees, honestly. It's much better. I actually like I could be happy with that tree. Again, I'm gonna try to add a little bit to these little guys here. I'm not overly thrilled with the dots the way they turned out, so just covering them up a little, adding a little bit of yellow, and I'm gonna pause the video to grab the piece for the piece of birch. Actually, no, I'm gonna use a different technique. If I didn't come prepared, I'm just gonna go with what I have. So what I'm gonna do is, the technique that I use is, normally I use a piece of cardboard, but I'm gonna have a pile of red, or a pile of white paint and a pile of black paint. And then normally just dip the cardboard back and forth between the white and the black, and it kind of naturally mixes on the cardboard. Well, I'm gonna have a blade brush, and I'm gonna do the same thing, and I'm just gonna kind of dip back and forth between the black and the white. And I am gonna try this out on my palette, make sure it does what I want. Yep, it's doing exactly what I want. And so essentially, I'm gonna start with this little guy. Essentially, I just go right across the trunk. And I can go a little bit into the trunk, but you can see it's got that streaky look the paper birches have. That's it. That's the technique. So going back and forth into my black and white. And this is on here pretty thick. And okay. And adding just a few. And it's not perfect. That's actually what we want. We don't want it to be perfect because if you've ever seen a paper birch, they're certainly not perfect. And this is the big kahuna, so I'm gonna be just a little bit more careful. And the paint is going on pretty thick, which is fine. And I'm gonna add just a few more of those places where the tree kind of peels off. That's kind of the black streaks on. Just cleaning up those ends. Not really necessary. Getting up in here a little bit. Okay. And now I'm just going to go in with the black, pure-ish black, and add a little bit more of those lines. Just kind of, the lines are already there, I'm just kind of adding to them. They already exist, just accenting where they already exist. There we go. Now those lines look a little bit too even, I guess you could say, for a birch tree. So I am gonna kind of just add a little bit more white to that. Definitely it to look a little bit more like a paper birch. That looks much better on the canvas. Like I said, getting that bird's eye view, just showing that trees kind of don't necessarily always have. This is where it gets trickier. They don't always look perfect. I'm just kind of showing those different things that trees have, those irregularities that trees have. So this is that looks like, and then like I said, kind of just going up into the tree branches. Not a whole lot. For the most part, that's all covered in leaves, but just making sure that we get some of those visible. That looks like a paper birch tree. Now I'm gonna just go back. So this has been drying for a little bit. I'm actually quite happy with this. I have pure white on my brush. Maybe there's like a hint of black in this from the birches. I'm actually gonna go in and just a hint of water to make this a little easier to get on canvas. I'm actually gonna go in and continue to highlight some of these areas. I like the way that this turned out, and so just want to add very, very light brush strokes to just kind of add those highlights that are kind of naturally coming along. Trying not to get my brush too straight, but it almost looks like there's switchbacks in this hill. So just getting some of those areas highlighted just adds a little bit more flair to that. And then we still have these yellow trees. Actually just gonna touch, they look like they're dry enough. I'm gonna add a little bit of, I've got some red here. I'm gonna add a little bit of water, red and yellow. See if I can get a little bit more kind of those orange trees in there. Got orange. Get my brush dry, and now we can go just into the pure red. Get some of those. So just a few of those. And that actually looks really nice. I do think that the black is a little too dark. So like I said, my plan was just to add a little bit more black into the existing gray that we have. And so I've got just a little bit more that I can add. much, but probably enough to get this darkened. I've got a little bit of black for my nose. For black being a strong color, it's not darkening this as much as I'd like. There we go. So just it's almost black, but not quite. And the idea is just to get a little bit more depth with some of those pieces. So again, just adding a little bit of water and very little on my brush to just see if I can get some of these places lightened up just a little. Apparently I used the same color. Very similar to the color that's on my brush. That's hilarious. Okay, well, let's see if I can get it lighter. I'm aiming for almost a slate color. See if I can get that just a little bit lighter. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we want it to not be perfect, but see if we can get that lightened just a hair. And I'm very much using my bird's eye view. There we go. That's definitely looks more like kind of a hill where, who knows, landslide happened. As I'm looking at the bird's eye view, these yellow blobs are definitely not working, so I'm gonna just darken those, or put just plain yellow on those and see what we get by doing just straight yellow. We might need to do background trees. Do some red. That'll be a tree leaves. That's much better. The grass and the sand I'm happy with. Those look very nice. I think that we're at a stopping point for this particular painting. I like the way that it's turned out. I'm gonna just review how this started with random brush that I have that's clean. So up in the top left corner, we had started with yellow, bright yellow, that represented my happiness. And so, and now that yellow is still here. It's still very much part of the painting, and it's a kind of ironic. I mentioned that I like paper birch trees, and one of my happy places is going out into the woods, and so this kind of represents one of my happy places. And then also over here we have the blue, which was representative of my sadness. And so the blue hasn't really changed a whole lot. So, you know, but it's a very beautiful thing. It's not something that should necessarily be dismissed, but it hasn't changed since we added the acrylic to it. It's pretty much stayed the same. And so I don't know what that means psychologically, but I think it's just an interesting observation. And then through the middle we had, this was all just very straight lines of green, which ended up turning into our little forest and kind of a plain area. And this was representative of growth. And one thing I can tell you about this part, it was a lot of work. And that is true when you are going through something that's sad or tough. It is very true that it's a lot of work to get to that point where you have the healthy balance between happiness and sadness. We do all experience loss in some regard, and we all have things that make us happy, and so just finding a healthy balance between the two. I very much believe that if you've never experienced loss in your life, you haven't really lived, and so to have that mentality means, I've got great loss, great joy, and then this growth is kind of how you, the work that's required to maintain that balance between both. But this is the final painting, and I thank you for joining me, and I will hopefully see you at the Wabasso Gala fundraiser, where this is going to be auctioned off for to help the school. Take care.